Well, the first episode was something special to say the least. I don't think there's been an opener to a show as good as what we witnessed in this episode for a very long time. More specifically, the first 33 minutes of the show. There was tension created in a way that had me on the edge of my seat without even realizing, and only once it finished did I realize I was. There were emotions that I've not felt before after only a short amount of time, and there were action scenes that were far beyond what I expected to see in the opening half an hour. So with that, I thought I'd break down the opening 33 minutes of the 80 of the first episode and explain why it was so good. So let's get into it. Here is why the first 33 minutes of The Last of Us Episode 1 were perfect. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Even though I'm discussing 33 minutes, I'll be talking about two separate time periods, a family that looked relatively happy turning into a broken one, and a world that was normal turning into something that became completely unrecognizable. So we went on a real journey as the viewers in such a short amount of time, something that many shows try to tackle but often fail miserably at when trying to do so. The main focal points that I'll be discussing in this video will be the tension, the horror, and the characters paired with the emotion. Let's start with the tension. What this show did to start with in order to build the tension and begin with the seed being planted in our mind that something was soon to be arriving was by starting the show in 1968. 35 years before the infection started, where we saw that there was a debate happening about fungus and the damaging effects that it can have on humans, along with the rapid rate in which it can spread, and the fact that it didn't impact humans at that current time due to environmental factors. However, with the world getting warmer, we saw that it was down to the population being a reason as to why it started spreading. So from the off, we knew that something was coming, the damaging effects that it had, along with the incurable nature that it had too. It painted a picture of devastation that was left up to our own imagination. Once we then cut to 2003, we saw Sarah and her father Joel, and what was interesting about this section, the section before anything really happened, was that it really focused on making these 15 minutes as normal as possible. We saw Sarah at school, cooking breakfast, being sat on the bus, and just looking relatively bored. Something which allowed the world to feel tangible, relatable, and like something we know. However, there were the odd moments that in that very ordinary environment showed us that things weren't as they seemed, which then meant that the tension was rapidly increasing. This was the use of planes flying over the town, the panicking wife of the owner of the watch store, and the dog acting suspicious of the older lady, of course with her in the background acting strange too. It was a very real world with abnormal differences, and it provided an extremely uncomfortable nature that elevated the tension and as a viewer made me feel extremely unsettled. The moment that I thought was the most tense-filled though was when they got into Joel's truck and were driving out of town. Stylistically, they decided to make a really interesting choice throughout this scene. We had glimpses of the chaos and death that was becoming present in the town outside of the vehicle, but we as the viewers were located inside of the car, so much so that the lens of the camera was almost acting as our perspective, hence why it was shaky with the movement of the truck. It spun around as if we were turning our body around to look out the back window. And as well, all we saw as the viewer was the chaos that was unfolding before the view that we had then cut to black, as if we had just been rendered unconscious like the characters. It was an incredible stylistic choice and made the moment feel extremely real and like we were actually there, something that doesn't often get used much, but in the right environment like this one, it's often the best way for the scene to be shown to us. Tension was at the heart of these 33 minutes of the first episode, and the false sense of security in this world matched with the subtle abnormalities was something that made these 33 minutes feel far longer than what they actually were. The horror. This show didn't have too much in-your-face horror embedded within it, but what it did have when it was included was extremely valuable and creepy. Whilst not focusing on jump scares, it focused more on the visual side of things, and also the unsettling, uncomfortable, eerie environment that it wanted to make us feel like we were within. The way in which the infected people moved when they were first infected and having these cluttered, panicked behaviors really connected to the start of the episode, where it essentially said how the fungi would take over the brain and use the body as a shell, where it would just be out of your control. The quick movements made it feel like there was no escape from what was chasing them. That, paired with the dead behind the eye look and the blood that was smothered all around their face, provided a haunting image that lingered in the mind and felt like it shone amongst the darkness, which made it even more harrowing. Other moments were the more subtle ones, like when we were focused on Sarah looking at the movies on the shelf, and in the background an out-of-focus movement where the old lady's mouth was just wide open and her head was moving was a classic move, but nonetheless was a creepy moment for sure. Previously, she was a woman who wouldn't move, was in a wheelchair, and was seen not even opening her mouth to eat food. However, now she had it wide open as she looked as though she was infected and was going to cause trouble later on down the line. The polar opposite to what we saw a matter of moments earlier. One final moment that I'll touch upon was the horrific nature of the atmosphere that was created. As I mentioned when I spoke about tension, the use of the camera inside of the vehicle made the atmosphere feel tense. But what it also did was add an element of claustrophobia. Claustrophobia in multiple different layers. There was the sense of feeling trapped inside of the car, but also trapped inside of the town, as outside there was no escape from the constant influx of infected people. That then paired with the plane that hit the floor showing a heartbreaking, devastating moment was something that stuck with me as a scene that really stood out in terms of graphic, realistic, and devastating scenes. Horror is about experiencing something when watching, a thrill in what horrible things are about to come, something we want the opposite for in reality, so this show tapped into that well. The characters. Within this small section in question, there wasn't a large number of characters that were introduced to us. We only really saw Sarah, Joel, caught a glimpse of the neighbors, and also Tommy. But we mainly saw the first 15 minutes from the perspective of Sarah, and it was only when the infected started attacking that we saw it from Joel's view as well, which is what I think tied into the emotion of the final scene, where we saw that Sarah was injured and subsequently died. We spent the majority of it with just her, and we saw that she was fearful throughout the entirety of it. But what made her death even more heartbreaking was that she wasn't killed by what she was fearful of. She was instead killed by somebody that should have protected her, which made it hit so hard. Joel's loss and how the character had the emotion at the forefront of the delivery was extremely powerful to witness. The final 3 minutes of him holding her the whole time, trying to protect her and keep her safe, was a poignant image that stuck in my mind. And it's something that we saw you could tell was still in his mind too in the present day, in 2023. Whilst I'm only discussing the first 33 minutes of the first episode, the entirety of this first episode was incredible to watch unfold. Everything that this episode contained in the opening 33 minutes, it took forward with it, developed on, and showed us that there was not only that, but more to offer as it did another time jump into the present day. I'm looking forward to continuing this season as I think it could genuinely end up being one of the best shows of the year. It's bold to say that in January, but it genuinely feels like it could be. So, there you have it. Why the first 33 minutes in The Last of Us Episode 1 are perfect. If you want to see more videos such as endings explained, theories and predictions, and character breakdowns, then click on the I button, or alternatively you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. If you'd like to give me a show or movie that you'd like me to review, then head over to my Twitter, @brainpilot_, and tweet me what show or movie you'd like me to review next. And finally, if you'd like to see what I rate the latest movies that don't quite make the cut to getting a dedicated video, then head over to my Letterboxd profile. It's where I rate the latest releases in real time. What did you think of episode 1? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.